Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this panel discussion. So tonight we are going to talk about data engineering, its career path, and WeCloud Data has invited some alumni to join this session to share their learning experience and also job search experience. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, just a quick introduction to WeCloud Data. We are one of the best data training boot camps. We've been running data science, data analytics, and data engineering programs for several years. We are constantly ranked as one of the best boot camps out there when it comes to data. We have all kinds of data programs. Data science diploma program. This is the boot camp program. It comes with full-time and part-time options, and it covers important skills such as Python, SQL, and we cover machine learning extensively in the program. And one of the advantages that we have, we discuss big data in a lot of details, teaching data scientists how to use PySpark and use Spark for scaling machine learning for machine learning projects. We also offer students the opportunity to work on real client projects. So yeah, we have a new cohort starting in September. We also have business intelligence or data analytics bootcamp. This is a relatively shorter program. It runs for 3 months part-time. So it's a weekday evening, based program. Next cohort is starting in October. So if you would like to learn Tableau, Python, SQL, and also how to work with Power BI, this is one of the best data analytics programs out there as well. We also, of course, have a data engineering program. The data engineering program is a certification program that runs for 6 months. We have students studying part-time with us, but also the full-time students will be working on real-life projects as they go through the program. This is a pretty hands-on program where you get to learn a lot of the hot topics in data engineering. And I'll leave it to our alumni to talk about their experience today. And if you're here for AI, machine learning engineering, we also launched an AI program beginning of last year. And this year, we just made some upgrades to the program. So we now have large language model bootcamp, where it focuses on building generative AI applications. For those students who are into DevOps, deploying machine learning in production, we also have the MLOps program. But combining all of these topics together, you also get to complete an AI diploma program with us, and the next cohort is starting in October as well. I'd like to use just one more slide to summarize, why WeCloud Data is very unique. I think anyone who's considering a bootcamp, the goal is to switch career or get into the data or AI space. And I think you can increase your success rate by 30 to 70%. And this is based on the ministry, survey data. So basically, we're a registered, private career college. And the ministry will be calling all of our graduates for employment survey. This is a survey that was just done for the 2021 student. Usually there's 1 year lag in the data science program. And as you can see, the employment rate in the third column, most of the boot camps have really good employment rate. WeCloud Data has 90.9%, but other boot camps are doing pretty well, like 83%, 84%. But if you look at the employment in the data field, which means they came here for the data science, data engineering program, and they graduate getting a data job. And with WeCloud Data, it's 90.9. And you can go to the ministry website to find out these details. But the second best bootcamp only has 68%. So we already have 30% higher success rate. But compared to some other bootcamps, it's significantly higher. So, and I think we help our learners to get jobs, not only because we have really good curriculum. The program is not perfect. We are constantly here listening to the feedback from the students. Actually, some learners, get frustrated as they go through the program. because learning data engineering is hard. People come from many different backgrounds. So ultimately, we help the students or learners get their hands dirty with real life projects, and they get to work with companies and sort of build up their experience that they can use to enrich the experience section on their resume. And this is what really separates WeCloud Data from other boot camps, and that's why one of the main reasons why we also have really good success rate. So if you would like to hear more about the employment rate or success stories, you can talk to us. We're happy to give you more details. Without further ado, we're going to talk about data engineering career tonight. We invited 3 alumni, Imad, Daniel, and also Yang. And sorry, Daniel, I just realized that I misspelled your name.
That's all right.
Imad is currently, I think he just graduated. So he's still working with Beam Data on some real client projects. And Daniel, he graduated, I believe, last year. He got a senior data engineer job at NASDAQ. I believe that's not the only offer he got, but we'll leave it to Daniel to share more details with you. And we also have Yan, who started with Rogers, which was one of the largest telecommunication companies here in Toronto. But looks like Yan, I just checked your LinkedIn. You just got another job at Scotiabank, so congratulations. But yeah, we have alumni. They came from different backgrounds. They had different, journey. So let's hear what they have to say today. So first question, tell us about yourself. We'd love to know more about your background, what you're doing right now. Yeah, anyone can go first.
I can go first.
Sure, Imad, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Imad Kailat. I'm a recent graduate of Data Engineering Bootcamp from WeCloud Data. I have a background in oil and gas. I spent about 7 years working in field operations and technical sales. I decided to make a transition and switch over to the data realm. So after doing my own research and looking at different programs out there, I decided to go with WeCloud Data's data engineering program, a bootcamp actually. And I'm currently, like Shah was saying, I'm currently working as a data engineer with Beam Data, handling one of the client's projects.
Thanks, Imad.
All right, I can go next. Yeah, so my name is Daniel Chi. I work as a senior data engineer at NASDAQ. And my background is in mechanical engineering. I went to school for mechanical. I worked as a mechanical engineer for a year before moving to sales application engineer for 3 years, and then in a project engineering role. And when I was in the project engineering role, that's when I was introduced to the world of data. Working with, even though we were a manufacturing firm or a distribution firm, we did work with a lot of data. We had a lot of purchase orders coming in, a lot of different parts and whatnot. And it was just the first time when I heard about AWS, I was like, what the hell even is AWS, right? And luckily, one of my friend was actually doing vCloud Data, and he started explaining to me, so yeah, this is a cloud, you can put, because the company that I worked for had on-prem server, and he's like, what are you guys are storing? You guys are paying like $6,000 every 6 months. That's a lot of money. You just store it in S3. I was like, what the hell is even S3? Right. So that topic started rolling down, and we started talking more about data, and that just got me excited about, this field. And that was basically how I was introduced to vCloud Data. I enrolled in the program last year. I graduated in August 2022. Went through a lot of frustration of applying. We can talk about it more later on. But I finally I got 3 offers. One was from a company called Global Relay, PwC, and NASDAQ, and I went with NASDAQ. But yeah, we can talk more about it after words. Yeah, but that's me. I'll pass it to the next Yang. Was it Yang?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Yang, data engineer working for Scotiabank right now. As Xiaohua mentioned, I was in the program last year, I think last February to August. Then I got an offer from Rogers, which was a really great, a nice company. Well, before that, I graduated from McMaster University with electrical engineering. Then I was working for a manufacturing company where we're doing some of electronics design things. And then I had a little bit of experience with our ERP system. That was the point that I started doing a little bit of data, but not as serious as like a real professional data role. Then yeah, I went for the program. Actually, got referred by one of my friends. He had like a similar background as mine. Then went through the program. I think a year earlier than me. Then got a job as a data engineer too. So yeah, that was that. So then I went for the program. Then yeah, as I said, worked for Reuters. Then just last month, I just yeah, got a new job at a Scotiabank. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Thanks everyone for your self-introduction. We actually have 8 questions, not a lot. So let's move on to the second question. I'll make sure that we leave enough time at the end for Q&A. Second question, what was the biggest challenge during your career switch?
I could go first. I think my biggest challenge was because I came from a non-programming or computer science background. I did mechanical. The only last time I touched like programming was C++ in first year university, and maybe MATLAB, but that's it. That was my extent of like programming knowledge. So jumping into into data engineering, there was a huge learning curve for me, and especially when I started the boot camp. I was that one guy, who would listen to the whole lecture and like, what was going on? Like, it didn't understand anything, and that was like, I think like I had to put in extra hours, definitely after each lecture, to really understand, what the concept was, and trying to really grasp the knowledge, understand, how it's applied or why do we even use it, right? So it was that was like the huge learning curve, was like learning new tools, software tools or data engineering tools, and like implementing it in a project, which you guys, I'm not sure like if you guys are already enrolled in a program, data engineering program or not, but there's a full end-to-end pipeline, and for me it was kind of hard for me to really do the project because I was just not familiar with like the tech. So that was my biggest challenge, was because I came from like a non-programming background, so I had to put in the extra hour to really understand the tools, and and be confident about it, to talk about it, right? That's another challenge too. Like during technical interviews, especially like I remember my first technical interview. Oh my god, like I was embarrassed because they asked me so many questions, and at that point I was very demoralized because I was like, I didn't know anything. But that was actually a good thing, because that actually made me realize that I need to put in more work and try to understand. I basically understood where my weakness was and what I didn't know. And, for each interview that I failed, I actually got better and better. And that was also another reason why I was able to, learn faster, because I failed faster initially. And then later on, I'm not sure if this is one of the questions, but like during my interview phase, I just started like, left and right. It was just like easy for me. I wouldn't say easy, but it wasn't like, I wasn't nervous anymore. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I think I'll go for next. To be honest, I didn't have too much challenge when I switched my role, like when I joined the Reuters, because I remember like my client project was a data warehouse on Azure, so using Azure Synapse and Azure Data Factory, those kind of things. So Reuters is using the full like other services. So like to me, it was a quite easy switch. Yeah, so just because like I had all those experience with my client project. All right. But like maybe one challenge that I'm currently facing is when I switched to Scotiabank. we're using GCP, but we're using a little bit of GCP, but the majority of our stuff is on-prem. That's what I'm struggling to be honest. Like I guess like once you're used to the cloud, then there's a little bit like there's a big difference versus like between cloud and on-prem. You know, I guess maybe some of you might face a similar issue I'm having right now. But yeah, for me, like switching from my old company to Rogers, it was relatively easy just because that cloud project really helped me. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I remember when you did the project, it was using Azure, right? Yeah, okay. But Rogers, you guys use AWS, I'm assuming.
No, Rogers is using Azure, full Azure. Like we're using meaning like they're using ADF and the Databricks. So
cool.
like
So
a full set of Azure.
Okay.
Yeah, but like a lot of like they're using a lot of SQL stuff, like store procedure things. That's why
Right.
I remember like back when we were building up that data warehouse, we tried to use some of the store procedures. And my manager actually specifically asked me those kind of things, even like the table, like how do we plan the pipelines? How do I prepare the tables? Yeah, he asked those very detailed questions. I think that was the point that
Cool.
I got hot. Why I
Cool.
got
So that worked
hired.
out. That's great. Yeah, because when you guys were in the program last year, we mainly focused on AWS. And,
Yeah.
this summer we actually added Azure. So like remember like first project you guys did was purely on AWS using Lambda, Airflow, and things. And now like the big data engineering course, we actually moved that to Azure because of that data warehouse project we did, because we you know like
also that project we use DBT, right? And
DBT.
like I think the only reason I got my Scotiabank job was because they wanna get someone who actually use DBT, like heavily use DBT. We like that project we pretty much had a DBT pipeline from the beginning all the way to the end. So that was the kind of experience like Scotiabank was looking for. So the like a second round of my interviews, one of the senior engineer like he told me like he wasn't supposed to come into the interview, but he looked at my resume, saw the DBT experience, so he just jumped in. Then he asked me like a 30 minutes DBT stuff, and yeah, we're using DBT at Scotiabank with BigQuery on GCP. Yeah.
And Daniel, like to speaking to your struggle at the very beginning, I think you came from a different background. So I think you said coding was a challenge for you. I remember at that point we didn't really have SQL Python. We don't really teach that in the program. We sort of expect the learners to know SQL Python. That's like one of the screening tests. But a lot of students told us that you got to cover SQL Python because there are a lot of career switchers. So this summer we launched the data fundamental course. We're running the second cohort right now, but yeah, from now on, every student like they will be like automatically enrolled into the data fundamental course. That's like 2 months additional training. So it's like 8 months program, but it's sort of like a pre-boot camp, and the fee is waived for the bootcamp students. So I think this is really going to help a lot of students who don't come from SQL Python background. Yeah. So you can have like less frustration in the program.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is also because I've never worked with like software tech I was never in the tech industry. So it was a little bit huge learning curve for me, like understanding Dockers, Kubernetes. It's just maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just a slow learner. It just takes me time to learn more. But it was just I think like the struggle also made me explore more deeper into like each tool. So granted me more understanding about it. Like it took my time to learn those tools. But yeah, that's great that you guys are including the fundamentals as well. Yeah.
Cool. And Imad, I think you were trying to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I mean the two other alumni, I'll say, are a bit ahead of where I am career-wise. So they've already made the switch, and congratulations to you both. I'm still just a recent graduate, so just going through the beginning of the bootcamp, like some of you have said, this is overwhelming. It can be overwhelming, especially if you're moving from something that wasn't software related. I mean, I've always had a keen interest in programming, but I just never did that like as a career. But having all those technologies being learned or being taught us, and us having to pick them up every single week is quite something. But looking back now, after completing the program, the bootcamp was very well organized. It was exhaustive in terms of technologies, but all in all, it all fits together, and hopefully it's the beginning of the new chapter.
Awesome. Let's move on to this third question. Why did you pick a bootcamp over other learning options, or have you tried other learning options before you chose a bootcamp?
Maybe I can start. Yeah, I tried a couple of things. I tried to first learn Python, SQL, just through all kinds of courses because everyone's saying like, yeah, these are the tools that data engineers use, right? But even you try to learn a little bit, you just don't have the experience to use them. So for me, this bootcamp, I feel like the clown project really helped me a lot. Even when my friend referred me, said yeah, the clown projects it's really could be the key for you to land a job in the future, which in my case it was. Yeah, so that was my yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with what Yang said too. The client projects or the project itself, even like the midterm and the final projects, gave you a lot more ammunition to talk about during interviews than other people. Now, when I say other people, like people who are graduate from like computer science, they have never worked with or software engineering like undergrad. Like I don't believe that they have worked with cloud, or maybe they have worked, but not like a full like a full end-to-end pipeline. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's they haven't worked with that. So when you're in an interview, you kind of have that topic to talk about to show them like, oh, you did the full end-to-end. I think like with bigger corporate companies you work with, typically you don't do full end-to-end. I think it's like mostly startups. Like you only work at a specific part. Either you're doing the like the extraction part or the transformation part. Maybe you're doing the whole, but like typically it's like you're only focusing on like one specific section. But then when you're in the interview, you show them like this AWS architecture. They're like, oh wow, like you have created it end to end, and you can talk about it. I think that was really helpful in the interviews, like showing people the AWS architecture that you built. At least that was for me. Like one of my friend who did the boot camp, he actually didn't do the data engineering. He did the data science, but he works as a data engineer right now. Both of them, both of them did data science, but they work as a data engineer. Both of them, I believe, are now senior data engineer as well. And yeah, it was just talking to them. They said like it was overall it's a good bootcamp. I did look at other options too, like different brain station and all that, but I think their program compared to vCloud, I think vCloud is more hands-on and it's more like data engineering related, but I don't think the other ones. Now, my information could be outdated because it was a year and a half ago that I looked did the comparison, but definitely like vCloud has like the projects and the client projects that you do gives you a lot of like stuff to talk about during the interview. Yeah.
Hey Daniel,
Yeah.
you mentioned that the projects gave you ammunition to talk about during
Yes.
the interview. At what point did you realize that like because I also heard from students saying that they didn't really ask me a lot of questions about the two like capstone projects because if you have the Beam data experience, they may focus more on the Beam data related questions.
Yeah.
But like
yeah.
did
So
employers show
sorry,
interest?
go ahead.
Sorry, did employers actually show interest in like the end-to-end projects you did in the program? I was curious.
So two of them did, McKinsey and PwC. And I I have a little bit different style of interviewing. Sometimes I kind of take control and conduct the interview. And I just reverse the role, right? The PwC one was super impressed. Like the guy offered me a job. They didn't even go through the whole interview. The guy called Like I did the interview in the morning, and he calls me at night at 9 p.m. to tell me like, I don't even want to go through the whole interview. We want to give you a job offer. And the way I did it was basically it was they're like, what's your experience with cloud? Like, have you worked with cloud, right? And as soon as he says that, I was like, yeah, like I've done some ETL, but I can explain to you on a high level, right? Because obviously, like, I don't know exactly like Kafka. Yeah, I just know on a high level what it is. I can't explain like the nitty gritty stuff. But if I show them I just share my screen, like they didn't even ask for it. I just share my screen. I just show them the architecture. The guy was like impressed, right? He did ask me a couple of questions during when I was explaining my architecture. And he's like, oh, why did you use this? Why did you use, what if like, what's the alternative instead of Airflow? What's the alternative, right? In AWS service that you can use. And these kind of questions he asked, but it wasn't that hard. I think I was able to answer most of them. And he was pretty impressed, and he actually was like, yeah, this is pretty great that you have done an ETL, like a full end-to-end pipeline. So and same thing with McKinsey, the same thing. I talked to them. I didn't get an offer from them, but the guy actually, the recruiter who talked to me, he actually liked the way I presented, the way I talked. The only thing he could have put me through the technical round, but he said like, you don't have a lot of experience, and we could still put you through technical round, but I have a feeling like it's going to be really tough because they require at least 2 years experience. But he said that I want to keep. He's like, add me on LinkedIn once you have like a year experience, whatever, like at least like a year, or like you feel like you're comfortable. Reach out to me again if there's a position. He'll refer me again, and interview me. So those two like were the ones like actually I showed like the end-to-end pipeline. The other ones was just like I just talked about it, like the projects that I worked on. Yeah.
Okay. So what I learned today is that we basically need to tell them that, hey, I actually have something I can show you today, and let me share my screen, right?
Yeah. But for my style of interview, like if you guys see it, you're like, oh man, this guy like probably won't get a job. But like, trust me, like it has worked so many times. But it's all about confidence and how you project, and how you also need to also be truthful, right? You don't know, right? That's one thing I've learned, especially from my very first interview. This was with a company called Quantify, right? And I didn't know, that was my very first technical interview. It was a 45 minutes interview, and basically we did exactly the same thing, walking through the AWS architecture that we did for the Capstone projects. And I didn't know anything. Like she asked me like, oh, what do you this? And I can't even remember like EMR, this, like what's kind of like compute types are there, this. And I was like just dumbfounded. I was like, what the hell? I don't even know anything. And it was super embarrassing. But that was the thing, right? It was that was my first technical round, and I couldn't answer a single thing. But that was a good learning curve, because I knew like, okay, I need to really understand, like at least on a high level, the architecture, and be able to talk about it. And also, um, you know, basically I need to practice more about talking about the architecture. So yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
A follow-up question. So now you work at NASDAQ. I think I watched one of the AWS reInvent presentation. I think NASDAQ was running most of the stuff in AWS cloud, right?
Yes, they are.
So,
Yeah.
so my question is, how different is what you did in those two end-to-end pipeline from what you're actually doing as a senior data engineer in real life?
So so the senior, the thing is, it is you get that imposter syndrome, right? Like the first couple of months, they're like, oh, what the hell? Like I got a senior position, and given that I only the only experience I really had was Beam data and like the boot camp. But what I do have is like really good project management skills, right? And I've noticed that as a senior, I do have 2 interns and 1 junior data engineer under, like, who works with me. Um, and it's a lot of like just gathering requirements, and also you need to know like what you're talking about, right? During an interview, during a project meeting, they'll say like, okay, like we have this financial data, we want this partner has this financial data. How are we going to ingest it, right? It's in a Snowflake database. Like, how are you going to grab it, do some ETL process it and put it on S3, right? And then we have to set up the infrastructure. So it was quite different. It was actually, I would say, simpler, a little bit more simpler than what we did in the boot camp, because we had someone dedicated like that was handling the operation side. So basically let's say for that specific project, my job was to basically build a infrastructure to grab the data from Snowflake database, and to perform the ETL. Now, most of our stuff are done on Databricks, and we do the transformation. We write the code PySpark, do the transformation, and then we basically write the Parquet format into an S3 bucket, right? From there, the operations teams takes over. The data operations teams take over. They basically grab the data and they do whatever QA checks. So the funny part is, so QA is actually the data operations job, but for the last 4 weeks, I've been helping building their data QA part, even though it wasn't my responsibility, but I took it upon myself. So basically, we implemented Great Expectations, and we basically use that tool to do our QA work. Actually, I just submitted it this morning, at 5 p.m. today. The whole thing, like I wrote the whole documentation on Confluence, and how to use it, like what's the capability, what's the future improvement we can make. But today we handed it in. So that was a good learning a data engineering tool, like data quality tool. But to answer your question, what I did in the boot camp it wasn't exactly what I did, like what my current job is. Yeah.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel.
no
In the
worries.
interest of time, let's just move on to the next question. Do you have any suggestions on how to get started with learning data engineering? Any tips you would like to share?
I can begin. Someone that just didn't know anything about data engineering and now today can hold a conversation. Have luckily gone through a few rounds of interviews myself. Of course, it's you have to be self-driven. You have to be interested in it enough that you would be able to do this for not for the rest of your life, but for on a day-to-day basis, let's say. I would honestly suggest, if someone's looking into starting in, for example, data engineering, dive like the pre-boot camp that we had, or before the boot camp, was actually quite decent, because we started with SQL. You understand it? Can you understand it? Can you work with it? And then move on to Python, right? If these two things are things that you are okay with and are interested enough to keep learning and practicing with, then by all means, that's something that could start your journey. And then cloud is where it is most of the time these days. So as the bootcamp taught us most of the things through AWS, I really think cloud is something that's quite important, and it can be, I'll say, exhausting a little bit, because there's so many different things, even specifically with AWS. So to understand the difference between similar technologies or offerings or services even, and how to make them all fit together is quite useful.
Well, maybe I'll say maybe start with SQL. Like from my personal experience, I think I got tested SQL a lot more than Python. I'm not sure, is it because my resume or other things, but I feel like on the market, like people are asking more SQL questions. That's how I feel. Especially like later when you're using Spark, I guess you can always use Spark SQL, right? Which is a lot of people are using that. So but still, like the Python SQL both are quite important. But if you want to get started, yeah, SQL might be easier to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll basically agree with what my colleagues said. They just SQL definitely, like I think like almost all the interviews, not all, well, I would say like most of it, asked me SQL. Not as much Python. There was a couple of like NASDAQ did ask me Python questions, time complexity and like data pandas question, but most of them I've noticed was SQL, data warehouse. One of the company that I interviewed it, and I actually got to the last round but lost out to someone with more experience, was a company called Top Hat. They had a take-home technical take-home technical assessment, and they gave me 3 days to do. And oh wow, that was what a struggle that was. And Eric Zhang was helped me. Basically, I did the whole thing, and then he kind of like gave his opinion on like how can improve on it, and also my mentor as well. Like they took a look at it and also gave me some pointers on how can improve. So yeah, but it was the take-home assessment was it was all SQL. They gave me a database, and basically they asked like find this XYZ and um, basically to write some SQL queries and um, it also suggests some improvements on those queries. So yeah, I would definitely say like SQL is one of the things that you will be doing like during your journey into data engineering, during interviews, and also when you're working as a data engineer.
Cool, thanks. So we really need to get good at SQL. Okay, so we have 3 questions left. What kind of projects have you worked on in the boot camp? Maybe one of you guys can chime in and talk about the projects. Yeah.
I mean, the current version of the bootcamp, let's Shawa, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the one that we just finished is the latest cohort, and we did 2 different projects. One was an end-to-end pipeline for batch big data processing. We used Snowflake, Airflow, and Spark, along with let's say 5 or 6 different AWS services. And the other project was a real-time or near real-time data processing. We used other tech tools such as NiFi. We used a few AWS services and Kafka and Spark structured streaming. So it's a group, a very big group of technologies that we were able to deploy at the end of the day, just to showcase that we are able to use them. And when it comes to it, I mean, are we able to talk about why and what and where? That comes from beyond the bootcamp itself. Like it's on us as graduates to figure out why we use certain technologies and how do we talk about them when it comes to, for example, interviewing, when we're asked certain questions about the different technologies.
Cool, thanks, Imad. Moving on to the next question. Can you tell us a little bit about your job hunting experience? I know some of you have already shared some of those experiences, but if you have anything to add, feel free.
Yeah, maybe I can share some. I actually I probably had a similar experience as Daniel's. Like my first couple interviews were terrible, like extremely terrible. Like I couldn't even crack any of the questions. That was my experience. Like they gave me a SQL, like my mind just went completely blank. Like I just couldn't do a simple join or any of that. Then I remember also I got a Python question, basically just want me to build a dictionary. I completely lost. So that was like really bad. I think the one interview was supposed to be like 1 hour long. Then I probably only last for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so. Yeah, but just keep trying. Then later, my Scotiabank the interview, they kind of asked me like a 2 hours coding questions, and still I was able to kind of like solve them. Yeah. So just yeah, it'll be so like at first it'll be really suck at the beginning, that's for sure. But like trust me, it'll get better. It'll get a lot better. You know, sometimes just like you probably you will feel like you know really great after several rounds, several tries. Yeah. But just don't give up. And yeah. But I saw the question like you know regarding the experience. I would say don't pay too much attention on those experience like years of experience. A lot of the tools that you're using, you're learning, they're really new, right? So like even some of the jobs, even they ask for like if they ask like many years of experience, like say like 5 7 years of experience, they probably they're looking for Hadoop or some on-prem ETL tools like SSIS, like Informatica Talent. Those kind of jobs, yes, sometimes they do ask for more experience. But anything like you know cloud or like a Snowflake, Databricks, trust me, it wouldn't be a big thing for company like Rogers. They hire a lot of people with pretty much zero experience with Databricks because this thing is just so new. Even you know how to even you know a little bit how to use Databricks, it's probably nothing like the way Rogers is using it. So don't worry about that. Just you know show what you learned, and you know yeah just keep trying.
Thanks, Yan. I know 2022 or end of last year was pretty tough. I was curious to know what was the response rate? Like how many jobs have you applied for and how many interviews have you guys got?
I think mine probably like 10% or maybe a little bit higher than that. Mine wasn't that good. Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of lost count of how many I was applying. But I was kind of after my terrible, like I had the same experience as you, Yang. Like they asked me, oh, like what's a nested query, and I was like, it is just subqueries, right? But they're like, oh, can you do like in select, like how would you do find a number of columns? Like I just want to select this much column. So simple, but like it was like live, right? It was the first time doing like like a live coding interview, and I just got stumped. Like I think it was not hard. It was just like my mind went blank because I was so nervous. I was like shaking because it was the first time also conducting like through Zoom, right? I wasn't used to it. Um, yeah, I'd say I kind of lost track of how much I was applying, but I was pretty much like I would say every day I was applying at least like as much as I could, whatever was available. So I would say about like maybe 8 jobs to 10 jobs a day, given that if there was any position um, available. And I would say mine was also like maybe 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 a little bit higher than like 10% as well. Um, like I still remember like how many companies, the most memorable one was Top Hat because I was very hopeful. And this was my first, I guess, like real interview. I thought I had a chance. And this was on the day when I graduated, I think, on the 15th August. Um, and and I had a friend he was a senior data engineer there. He also graduated from the boot camp. Um, he basically referred me and he told me like, hey, I just want to let you know you didn't hear it from anyone, didn't hear it from me. Like you passed the technical round, and that was the data warehouse assessment. And then I had an interview with the tech lead there. Um, and he liked me a lot. So he passed me and one other guy to the final round, which was with the director. But apparently, I didn't get a schedule meeting with the director. Like he just interviewed the other guy who had, I think he had 2 or 3 years experience as a data engineer, and he just ended up going with him. And so that was a big bummer for me. And after that, I just getting interviews, a lot of startups. a lot of startups initially, but then started getting companies from a little bit bigger companies. Like Global Relay was my first job offer in first week of September, but I turned it down. I didn't take the offer, even the first job offer, because I didn't like the culture. Because the thing is, for me was looking for a job was there was a couple of couple of checklists for me that this should be like company that I work for should be open. This shouldn't be I don't know how to explain it, but like very old school, right? And the tech that they were working with, I don't want to be working with like old tech as well. And the people that I interviewed with, this seemed like there was no life in the interview, even though they offered me a job, but I turned it down. And then a couple of interviews in between, and then I think mid-October was when I got my second offer was from PwC. And that time I was still interviewing at NASDAQ. And then PwC basically said like, hey, we're going to give you like a week to accept the offer. And that time I was in my final stages of NASDAQ interview. So basically by the fourth round, I told the head of the data product team who was interviewing me at NASDAQ, after like the 45 minutes interview, I told him like, hey, would it be okay, like I get an offer by tomorrow? Like if you make a decision by tomorrow, because PwC's offer was expiring like in a day or two, right? So he was a little bit stumped, but then he's like, yeah, let's see. I'll talk to the other people, like the director and the senior, the other guys, and see if they, what they say about you. So the next day, get a call back from the HR, and they say like, hey, we were gonna, extending an offer to you. So it's pretty happy about that. Yeah.
Cool. That actually was really like because you graduated in August. That was really quick.
It was it was. I think I was the second person who got, or second or third person who got the job offer within a month. Well, if you minus the Global Relay, because I didn't accept that offer, I took this. Then it would have been like within a month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, last question before we head to the Q&A. What would be your suggestions for the other career switchers out there? If there's one thing you would like to recommend.
I think we touched upon it earlier as well, a little bit, at least from my side, would be, definitely get comfortable with programming, and definitely start reading more, like on what tech is out there. Like just get a feel about like what new tech is going on. Like, I don't know, follow a blog, watch YouTube videos. I think there's this guy, Seattle data engineer, Seattle data guy or something. He's pretty popular. Like, maybe follow him. There's another guy who was an ex staff engineer at Airbnb. I think his name is Zach. Um, and just follow these guys on LinkedIn, and they talk about like tech, and they talk about like optimization, Spark. These are all like good stuff to keep your skills sharp. But yeah, for me, like we pretty much touched upon it in the previous questions, but I would say like definitely like sharpen your skills on the programming part, and also like keep yourself up to date with like all the tech that's going on. And yeah, and if you have a chance, definitely I would recommend a book which was actually recommended to me by the PwC guy. It's a really good book. It's called The Phoenix Project. And it highly recommend that book. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. How about you, Yang and Imat?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, try the new things. Don't bother with the old stuff. Like as I mentioned, like right now, that's my struggle right now. Like I got a bit of like those like Hadoop things sometimes kind of like especially for us just started the new job in the data engineering field. It's kind of like difficult for us to get a really good at a Hadoop or like some even older tools, right? So instead of spending our time on those things, maybe try some new stuff. See like these cloud stuff or like a Databricks, Snowflake. That will make you more competitive for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add something, Shawa. Just be curious. Just stay curious. Especially for someone that's planning or working towards switching careers. I mean, you've already had, I don't know, 0 to 10 years of experience in certain domain, and now you're trying to move to something else. You're not only competing with the others in the industry, but you're just trying to supplement or complement whatever you already have. So one of, I think it was Daniel or Yang that said that if you already have, for example, project management experience, that really helps as well, because you're not competing with like a fresh graduate. You already have soft skills that are useful. You just need to be able to show them and make yourself stand out. The fact that you would present your screen and tell them this is what I did, that also stands out. So it's just about how do you show that you have the most value to offer this company, because at the end of the day, you will be working for them, solving their problems. So it's always useful to find out what their pain points are and just present yourself as a solution to that.
Yeah, I just want to further add, definitely soft skills is such an underrated like stuff we don't look at. Like we focus into like technical, but then we forget like, 40% I would say, or even 50% is also communication within the company, right? It's how you have an idea, you have architecture in your head, how do you convey it to the team, right? That's an important part. And like how you follow up and like, like soft skills is really important because you'll be working with teams from all across. Like for NASDAQ, I work for team like in Manila, US, Europe, and some of them like we have a team in US who's only dedicated for Kafka, right? And and then we have to work with them, and they have to you have to convey basically the architecture to them, properly, making sure all the requirements. Because I've noticed this actually with a couple of times where one of my teammates like would go to will go to a team and ask for certain stuff, but then when the team provides it, and then we find out, oh wow, we actually are missing this requirement, you didn't ask that, and then we go back. So communication is definitely like a skill I would say is also will get you promotion to like move you higher up in the ladder, corporate ladder, or like in your career.
Cool. Thanks, Imad and Daniel and Yang. It's great to have you guys back and share your experience. We're at the end of the panel discussion. Now, I think we have some time for questions and answers. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to go ahead and you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can send your questions to Zoom chat. I think one question came in. Perul said, I have a few years of experience in data engineering in Python, Spark, Informatica, Tableau, AWS. What tools do you suggest me to land a job? By self-learning, any suggestion would be appreciated.
I would say Spark is definitely the good thing. Just use PySpark. If you know Scala a little bit, that'll be great. But most of the time, obviously companies will use PySpark. Like when I was at Reuters, so we don't want people use Scala. It's just a bit of headache for us to maintain the code. So everything pretty much in PySpark. For AWS, I'm not sure like what kind of services you actually you have experience with that, but like the trend is probably gonna move to like a lakehouse structure. So maybe get more understanding on the S3. Then I think the it should be there. I think I've watched a couple like tutorials, like people showing how can you build a lakehouse structure on AWS. I think people are using Glue. right? Like or even Athena, I think those kind of things. I don't have too much experience on AWS, but for Azure, like when you want to build a lake house structure, basic just EDF for all the data ingestion, then Databricks for all the data transformation. Then we're using Delta Lake, building Delta tables on Azure. So I guess you could try to look at similar things on AWS. That's also something I'm currently looking at on GCP. Not too much information on GCP to be honest. So yeah.
Thank you, Yang. So my follow-up question would be, nowadays company are expecting us to know Airflow and DBT. So if I don't know, then what should be my way of communication with them?
I think DBT, maybe you go through a little bit tutorial. The DBT's tutorial is okay, but to be honest, DBT don't get too much on that. Even I know like some companies are asking for it, but like even see like our like a Scotiabank, we're using DBT, but I would say it's not a like from long term. I would say Spark still the better one to learn. I would say, yeah. Airflow, Airflow. I don't have too much experience with that. Like I only use Airflow in the bootcamp. Routers we didn't even touch on that. Scotiabank we have an Airflow on-prem, but my role doesn't do too much on that.
Yeah, I'll just further expand on that too. Definitely, I would say Spark. Even like at NASDAQ, everyone uses PySpark. I've maybe seen Scala once by another team, and that's it, right? And even like I looked at the code and then I had to basically translate that to PySpark. Well, I didn't do it; ChatGPT did, but just kidding. It's NASDAQ blocked ChatGPT for us for now. But but definitely like work on PySpark, I would say, is do that. And also like tools learning are great, but if you were saying about landing a job, like definitely like start like work, because the thing is really like for you to talk about like a tool, like you can read a book or whatnot, but really start building like at least like work on like a really small mini project so you can kind of like get a better understanding how it's used. I don't know about DBT, but at NASDAQ we use Airflow. I don't personally touch the Airflow part. I think I will later on, but there is another team that manages our Airflow. So we use Airflow there. And just I guess like my suggestion would also be like just get comfortable with watch a YouTube video on PySpark. It's not hard. It's just SQL, but like with SQL and Python basically had a baby, right? It's like that. I think I would like that. And yeah, definitely do that. Like if you wanna, if you're learning to do more learning into like the tech or the programming, like definitely do PySpark. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
Thanks. Question by Larry. With the rise of Snowflake, how much is shifting towards a managed service versus building ETL pipelines on AWS, Azure, and GCP? Just curious, like, have any one of you guys worked with Snowflake in your company? Because I think this really depends.
We use a little. We try to use Snowflake, but like I mean, like at Rogers, we heavily use Databricks. So
yeah,
I'm not sure. Like I know. Yeah, a lot of people are are talking about Snowflake.
Yeah.
Just my personal opinion, Snowflake is more like a marketing thing. I don't really like. I mean, like versus like Databricks. I'm a more like a Databricks guy. But I think Snowflake also got this Snowpark, right? They just released last year. I think that could be a similar thing to like a similar. It could be a similar way writing ETL pipelines as Databricks. So yeah, so like my experience was more like having like even here's one thing, like even like ADF and Glue, like tools like this, everyone is saying like they're GUI based, they're not good, but it really depends like how you use it. Like at Rogers, we have we use ADF, build up a metadata driven framework, data ingestion framework. Is super powerful, like just like a really good framework. I think probably they got this kind of solution directly from Microsoft. So like Microsoft is pushing this kind of a solution. Then yeah, so like but again, still depends on like a company, what tools you be using. Like even for Scotiabank, we were just like yeah, we're not even close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, at NASDAQ, we just use Databricks to do our most of our the ETL stuff. Yeah, then the only time I worked with Snowflake was just to grab some data from a partner's database. That's about it. Yeah, I don't have much experience with Snowflake.
Cool, thanks. I think these are just two competitors, but they are two of the biggest, I guess, players in the marketplace. Companies choosing Snowflake are more like building data warehouse or modern data stack. Those who chose Databricks Spark are more like companies building ETL as well as data lake and data lakehouse. I think these are two different schools of thought. I still think that Spark will be more scalable in terms of the cost efficiency, right? When you have truly massive amounts of data, Spark is probably still going to be cheaper to run. But not saying that Snowflake is not as scalable, but it can get quite expensive. But if you're more like SQL focused workload, then Snowflake DBT is really good. But if you need more flexibility, I think Spark give you that flexibility, and Spark can also do like large language modeling, machine learning as well. I know Snowflake is trying to add something like that. It just doesn't feel natural because everything is SQL based, right? They're adding machine learning capability as well, but at a certain point, it feels like the two platforms or frameworks start to look similar because they're all distributed systems. Then whatever you do in Spark, theoretically, you can achieve that in Snowflake as well. So yeah, I think they're going to divide the market, and but the lakehouse is something that's really, I think, really promising. And with Databricks, you have the Delta Lake, but lakehouse can also, there are also other lakehouse architectures out there, like the ones by Apache Hudi by Uber, and Netflix also has the Iceberg. So something worth looking into. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say these two, just learn the one that your company uses. Doesn't matter which one. For like especially for us, just start this new career. I would say it doesn't matter which one you want to use. Even like say for me, I'm learning BigQuery, such a little bit old thing, but yeah, I'm learning BigQuery right now.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay. So yeah, I'd like to thank Daniel, Imad, as well as Young for sharing their experiences today. It's great to have you guys back. And thanks everyone for your participation and asking a lot of good questions. If you would love to pursue a data engineering career, you know that there's one really good options out there, which is WeCloud Data's Data Engineering Bootcamp. If you have questions about data engineering as a career, we have future events, so stay tuned. And yeah, we look forward to hearing your future success. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.